dum 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 dum. Hey there! This video is about my little homebrew brewery slash taproom slash sports bar featuring the Grainfather all-grain brewing equipment. Now, as you know, the Grainfather system was designed to be used in a small area such as an apartment or corner of a garage, and it uses an electric heating element rather than a gas flame to heat the wort and the sparge water. Now, brewing in Florida, especially during the summer months, can get very hot and humid, so I needed to bring my brew process inside where I could brew my beer in a temperature-controlled environment. So, in 2015, with the approval of my wife, I built a small room in the garage and I bought a G30 boiler and a sparge water heater from Grainfather. Now, over the years, I've made many design changes to the room, and I've moved from carboys and a keezer to the Grainfather conical fermenter and the pressure transfer kit. So, what's that you say? You want a tour while listening to funky background music? Well, grab a beer and let's go. So, let's get started on the tour showing the Grainfather all-grain brewing equipment. Here's my conical fermenter sitting at a comfortable 67 degrees with a nice Citra IPA inside getting happy. Next to the fermenter is the Grainfather G30 boiler. Now, I have separate videos on my YouTube channel that go into detail about the Grainfather brewing equipment. The video on the Grainfather conical fermenter shows my solution to providing cooling to the fermenter and the modifications that I made. My video on the Grainfather G30 boiler shows the modifications I did, such as using a glass lid with a heat-resistant handle and a long stem adjustable valve on the wort discharge pipe. Now here's my counterflow chiller from Northern Brewer. I used the Grainfather counterflow chiller for years and even did some modifications to it, but when I redesigned my system layout, I needed the input and outputs to be facing the same side. Now here is the Grainfather sparge water heater mounted at a height to allow for a gravity feed to the Grainfather boiler grain basket. Again, I have a detailed video on my YouTube channel on the modifications I did to the sparge heater and the gravity feed pipe attachment. On brew day, there's a lot of moisture being generated, so I installed a range hood with an exhaust fan over the boiler and a duct with an inline fan to discharge the moisture outside. The range hood has a nice LED spotlight, and it's also a good place to mount my timers. Here's one of the two TVs, so by definition, this is a sports bar. Actually, I made up that definition, but hey, my place, my rules. Here's one of the two kegerators with a 3-inch wooden collar. The red tubing is the CO2 line for the Grainfather pressure transfer kit. So, I have the Grainfather pressure transfer assembly mounted over here for easy access. As a side note, if you plan on using one, I have a review and lessons learned video on my YouTube channel. Below the pressure transfer assembly are the CO2 and beer lines connecting the two kegerators. So in the middle I have an Apple TV, an HDMI audio splitter, and an HD Fury which converts HDMI to component video from my older TVs. I have two analog Johnson controls cycling the kegerator compressors on and off, and two digital displays monitoring the temperatures inside. For those of you that have seen my video on cleaning the counterflow chiller and the beer lines, you'll recognize the flush mixer mounted on the wall. If you've seen my video on using a postal scale to determine the number of pours left in the keg, you'll recognize these control panels with the PCS function for taps 1 through 3. Here are the number of pours left in each of my 3 taps. That Citra IPA is going to be ready just in time. So here are the taps in my tap room for 3 of my 4 kegs. The other tap is out at the Tiki Bar with the Yoga Frog. I make stickers for each of my homebrew beers, and I write in the current guest beer that's on tap from a local brewery. Underneath the taps, I number each tap to the correct keg scale display. I have a menu board on the door next to the taps so everyone knows what they're drinking. And above the door is a poster of the greatest album ever made. Hey, remember what I said about my place, my rules? So there is the second TV to complete the category of a sports bar, and a computer station where I design my beers on Beersmith and make these great YouTube videos. A phone so I can ignore all incoming calls, an air conditioner to keep the brewmaster cool in the summer, and also no tap room would be complete without a wine rack to keep everybody happy. Now there's a Wi-Fi extender, my clipboard with today's beer recipe, a storage cabinet, a calendar for upcoming brew events, hand sanitizer, and a beverage refrigerator. Now here's my dual-purpose cooler for my counterflow chiller and my Grainfather conical fermenter. If you've seen my video on the Grainfather conical fermenter, you'll recognize the front of the cooler. However, I recently rebuilt the inside of the cooler and increased the length of cooling coil from 50 feet to 100 feet and made some other modifications. You can check out how I built the dual-purpose cooler on my YouTube channel. The dual-purpose cooling coil is made possible by these 2 3-way valves which channel the cooled water to either the counterflow chiller or the conical fermenter. Now before I switch from cooling the counterflow chiller to the conical fermenter, I use this valve to purge any air bubbles in the line which could cause the cooling pump to cavitate. I connect the hose to the counterflow chiller here and monitor the temperature of the cooling water by regulating the flow of water going through the cooling coils. Here's the upper portion of my control panel where I have a main shutoff valve for the water supply and a variable control for filling the sparge water heater. On the lower portion of the control panel, I have a water supply valve for the Grainfather boiler, a variable control valve for regulating the water flow to the cooling coils and the counterflow chiller, and a switched electrical power outlet for my Grainfather conical fermenter control module and cooling pump. So here's the way it would look on brew day with the counterflow chiller and the Blickman through meter providing cooled wort to the Grainfather conical fermenter, the gravity feed assembly connected to the Grainfather sparge water heater, and the Grainfather boiler wort discharge pipe connected to the counterflow chiller, and of course it wouldn't be complete if we didn't have a football game on TV. So, that's the brewery tour. You know it's a small brewery when the tour consists of just standing in one place and turning around. And as always, if you have any comments or questions, let me know. Cheers.